Hey everyone and welcome. If you've been following my channel, you know that I'm building one workbench for all my equipment. If you haven't, then now's the time to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future builds. In today's video, I want to add my compressor to this area here so I can enclose it completely. This will allow me to add soundproofing, so I have one less tool adding to the noise levels in my shop and annoying my neighbors. I also want access to the air, be able to switch the compressor on and off, and be able to dump the tank from outside the box, so I wouldn't have to open and close the door all the time. Now, a compressor might not be a conventional or must-have power tool for woodworking, but having compressed air at your immediate disposal has a number of advantages, and that's why I decided to add the compressor to my bench. But before I can do anything, I need to size some paneling so I can enclose this box. So the first step in closing up this area is installing the base. Just like in previous videos, I installed these slats on the inside here to support the base, and I made a little cutout to fit over the corner post there. Okay, so with the base installed, I added these two panels on the sides here, and the last one to complete the box would be the door, which is this panel that I will fix with hinges on the side. But before I add the door, I want to leave it off so I have access or free access to the inside of the box to complete the installation, put the compressor inside, and then I'll put the door on last. I also want to make a cutout in the door, obviously, to allow air to get into the box for the compressor. So on this panel here, I want to install my on-off switch. The on-off switch is going to be wired to a small control panel which is going to control how the compressor behaves inside the box. Things like when I switch the switch off, I want the compressor to automatically dump the contents of its tank or the air in its tank. I'm also going to cut a hole here out of which my air line is going to feed, so I have access to the air on the outside of the box without having to open the door to get to the compressor. I also want to add a pressure gauge and stuff like that. So first thing I'm going to do is add the electrical component to the inside of the box. Then I will add the air lines and install the soundproofing over it, so it conceals that, and I think it's going to look a bit nicer. When all that's installed, I can put the compressor in its place, put the door on, and that'll be it. Okay, so to build the control panel for my compressor, I'm going to use all of these salvage components that I have laying around my shop. You will notice many of them are way out of spec. The valve, for example, is way overkill, but I had it, so I used it. Because the parts are salvaged, I had to design my control panel around what I had. So there's many things people might say, oh, I would do this different or this different, but like I said, I need to use what I've got. But before I go on, I would just like to say the next part of the project does involve an electrical component that might be a bit intricate for some. If you have limited knowledge of electricity, I would strongly advise against trying to mimic what I'm going to do now, as electricity does have or pose a certain amount of danger, such as electrical shock, potential fire, or even damage to your equipment. So I'm going to assemble my control panel now, and then I will explain how it's going to work or what the idea is behind it. Okay, so with my controller pretty much assembled and wired, I just need to add the wiring between the compressor, the controller and the user interface. I can jump on my user interface. Now this is what the user interface is going to look like. It's going to have my on-off switches, my gauges, indicator lights and stuff like that. And it will be installed on the outside of the box, allowing me to input or control how the controller behaves, and this will then control how the compressor behaves. I just made these cutouts on my drill press, and then this for the grinder. It doesn't look amazing, but this is a woodworking shop after all, not a metalworking one, but it'll do the job. And that's it. The gauge is going to sit there on the inside. I'm just going to wire this up and then I can fit it to the inside of the bench. Okay, so with all my preparation done, it's time to start assembling everything and putting the compressor in its place. But just before I do that, I just quickly want to run through how this system is supposed to work. My primary entry point for my live circuit, which is going to be this circuit, is this old switch I salvaged from a table saw. And I'm using it as an isolator switch, meaning this is going to be switched on to make this panel live and off to kill this panel. Now, I'm going to add this little light here to tell me when this switch is switched on, this light comes on and tells me that this circuit is now live. When I switch it off, the light goes off, obviously. I did this so that when I lock up at night, this light will remind me that this panel is live and that I need to switch off. Another advantage of using this switch as my isolator is it has an internal overload protection or circuit breaker that trips at 16 amp. So this will protect this entire circuit and my compressor from a current overload. If it trips, I can just reset it over here from outside the box. From there, I will use this switch to turn my compressor on and off. Switching this switch on will bring in this normally open contactor, giving power to the compressor, and it will then run until the tank is primed and the cutoff on the compressor switches it off. When I switch the switch off, this contactor will fall out, this one will come in, initiating a time sequence that will open a valve to dump the contents of the tank. Once again, I will be able, on the pressure switch or pressure gauge here, I will be able to see when the pressure in the tank is depleted, and at that point I can switch off my control circuit again. Something else I did is add a earth protection here. That's why I installed all of this on steel plates, so that I can earth these plates, and this switch will then monitor any leakage of current down to these plates. If any of these wires had to get damaged and short onto this plate, this breaker will just trip. As for this massive power supply I've got here, it's the only 24 volt DC power supply I have, and the valve I'm using to dump the contents of the tank is a 24 volt DC valve. If I had a smaller one, I would use a smaller one. Okay, so as for my little control panel, I put these foot pieces on so I can bring it away from the wood, and also so I can get some soundproofing in behind it. Okay, now I've got all my cables installed. I've got my two coming from my user interface to my controller, and I've got the one for the dump valve and one for the compressor. I've also got my power supply cable going in the corner there. Now I'm going to connect these four up. I'm going to put in the air pipes and install the soundproofing over it. Just one more thing I want to note quick. For the compressor power, I'm going to install a plug here so the compressor can plug in there, and for the air, a quick coupler. This is going to allow me to remove the compressor if I need to use it at a different place or at a different location, away from my workshop. Alright guys, so the end is in sight. All I need to do now still, before I install the soundproofing, is add this pipe, which will be where my tool connects to. I want it to be loaded up at the back here, allowing me to feed it out from this panel and use it when I need to. So the way I'm planning on installing this pipe on the inside of my enclosure is using this old curtain rail that I cut to size, and then the pipe will be placed on it like this on the inside of the enclosure. Now I can feed the pipe out and store it like that again. Then I'm going to use these 2 planks that I cut holes in to mount this to the inside of my enclosure. I'll just fix it with screws from here and then mount it on the inside of the enclosure so it can't do this. Okay, so the idea seems to be working as it was intended. Now I can just install the soundproofing, put the compressor in its place, and we can test it. Okay, so I've got this soundproofing installed in the enclosure. I'm just going to fix it down on some points with silicone. I just have to do the door still. The base I'm not going to do. The top I can't do yet because I'm still playing around with the idea of adding a router extension or router table here. So yes, I'm going to stick down the soundproofing and then I'll put the compressor in its place and I can test it. Okay, so with the compressor in its place, the air and the power connected up, I'm just going to fit the door quickly and then I can test it. To fit the door, I attached hinges to the side here. I'm going to place the door in place, line it up and fix the hinges. The door itself, not really that complex, it's a door, but I had to cut a louver in for it so the compressor can suck the air it needs to fill the tank, and then also added soundproofing to it as well. So now I'm just going to put the door in and then we can see if it works. Okay, so now the compressor is supposed to run until it reaches its 7 bar and then cut off automatically, giving me air at this point to use. Okay, so there the compressor switch is off. On this hose here, I've got a quick coupler so I can attach my tool I want to use. And then when I'm done and I switch this off, the valve inside is supposed to dump the contents of the tank. And that's about it. I know you won't be able to notice on the video, but the soundproofing really does make a huge difference. And as for the electrical components, it may be a bit overkill, but I had the spares and I wanted to try it out, so I'm happy with the result. Now I can control my compressor from outside its enclosure, and I have access to my air, and I can empty out the tank from outside. With the compressor installed in its own enclosure, I'm one step closer to completing my all-in-one woodworking workstation. I still have 1 or 2 additions, but the end is in sight. If you want to see me finish it off, remember to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.